Welcome back. Thank you for being here with me now. I have the pleasure and the privilege to moderate the second panel, the panel on sustainability and leather. And I would like to introduce this this panel with an idea, and that is normally when you Google leather in internet, what you find is a lot of links that lead you to very strange and the sites that show you actually the worst in class in at global level in the leather industry, and that is really a pity, because what you think the people think when they see these links and these images is that actually the leather industry around the world should be the same like that, and that is of course not the case. We see very daunting images of environmental pollution or social misconduct of tanneries, or even sites that explain that leather or tanning drives cattle production or livestock husbandry or slaughter, or even that leather is a driver of deforestation, which are all preconceptions that need to be confronted with information, with new information. And that is why in this panel we're going to have a little bit of insight into sustainability, how the leather industry perceives sustainability, what we are doing in terms of sustainability, and how this comes to play in the framework of this project. I would like to mention also that there has been a new report, a UN report that has been released recently, in which it is clearly indicated that there is no planet B, and that we have an urgency to work to make sure that we do not destroy a planet. And I can assure you that the European leather industry is committed to ensure that the industry is striving for being the best in class. Now, today I have in my panel a series of excellent panelists, which I would like to salute and to welcome here today. I would like to thank them in advance for the insight that they're going to bring. And we're going to have today 4 ladies working in the leather industry, excellent professionals that are going to give us their insight into the issues regarding sustainability. We're going to start with Debbie Burton. Debbie Burton is a marketing professional. She is the marketing manager of Pittards. Pittards is a world-renowned tannery that produces sheepskin leather. And Debbie Burton joined Pittards in 2012 for the second time, because she was working for Pittards already in the 90s. Then she left for developing products in Clarks and Timberland. But after all, she came back to Pittards, and where she is now heading the marketing department of Pittards. Debbie Burton is also part of the management board of an organization, a platform that promotes the leather industry, promotes leather, which is called Leather Naturally. Most of you will have heard about that. So we are going to have Debbie Burton speaking for as a first speaker. She's going to be followed by Christina Hajagos-Clausen. Christina represents the IndustriAll Global Union. IndustriAll Global Union is a trade union organization representing 50 million workers in 140 countries. that is the international counterpart of IndustriAll Europe, which is our counterpart in the European Union. Christina represents the manufacturing industries, energy sectors, as well as garment, textile, and leather sector, as well as the shoe industry. She is a board member of ACT, the platform that is Action, Collaboration, and Transformation, and she is also a member of the Global Steering Committee for the Accord on Fire and Building Safety in Bangladesh. You may all remember the terrible accident that occurred in 2013 in Bangladesh, the Rana Plaza accident. So Christina is going to speak about the social sustainability in the leather industry. She is going to be followed by Deborah Taylor. Deborah Taylor is the Managing Director of Sustainable Leather Foundation. It is a non-for-profit foundation that was set up specifically to support the leather industry in becoming more sustainable. It is a very interesting platform that promotes a certification scheme that is very innovative, because she's going to tell us how it works, but that is not only looking at environmental certification, but also on social and other aspects of the leather industry. Deborah is a practitioner member of the Chartered Quality Institute and a certified SA 8000 lead auditor. She is currently working as a consultant for the UNIC project on traceability and transparency, and we will have the chance to hear also from Deborah what can be done in the sector with regard to traceability and transparency. Deborah Taylor is also a council member for the Society of Leather Technologists and Chemists. Finally, but not least, Fabiana Orlandi. Fabiana Orlandi is an expert member of the Osservatorio Nazionale Concia, the advisory panel on the Italian tanning sector for topics related to environment, workplace training, and social responsibility. Fabiana Orlandi is employed by UNIC, the Italian tanners organization, UNIC-Concerie Italiane. Fabiana Orlandi is the head of the sustainability department. She takes care of circularity and social responsibility. So with these as the panel who is going to be filling you in the insight of the leather sustainability, and without any further ado, I would like to ask Debbie Burton to give us maybe the perception of leather by the general public. Who I think, Debbie, within the Leather UK and together with Leather Naturally, you did a very interesting study, and it would be very interesting to see how we are perceived by the general public.
Yes, thanks, Gustavo. I'm just going to share my screen here. I hope this is going to work. I don't think. Hi, Gustavo, could I ask you to share my slide, because it appears not to be working for me. Is that possible? Thank you very much. Yeah, I think for me, it's been really interesting listening to the first presentations and understanding about the lack of knowledge about the industry. So I consider it something of a privilege to be able to present the consumer's view of the leather industry. This was an initiative that was undertaken by Leather UK in conjunction with the University of Northampton and Leather Naturally late in 2021, and the results compiled into a report early this year. The thing that really drove the research for us is that, right now we're in a very fast changing world. Everything we eat is coming eat, consume is coming under increasing scrutiny, and we're encouraging people to make better choices. But in order to make those choices, they need to have the correct information to hand. And from our perspective, we see a lot of misinformation around. We see leather negatively being attacked in the press with the wildest claims and the most inaccurate information. And we see other materials organizations doing that in order to promote what they believe are greener alternatives. Quite often they are not. We see, for example, the term vegan has become confused with environmentally friendly or green. So what we decided to do was to understand the role of leather, what consumers think about it, how it affects their purchasing decisions. But we also did that against a wider backdrop of looking at the current purchasing behaviors. So for example, vintage fashion being more popular, people renting more readily, and also to not just to understand what people knew about leather, but what they knew about alternative materials too. So we could set, I suppose, the knowledge of leather in context of other materials. If I could just have my next slide now, please. Thank you. There is good news, but can you just maybe just bring all the points up, and then that will save us working through them. Thank you. There were really 4 big takeaways from the report, and I apologize, some of you I think in the audience will have heard this last week, but I think it possibly bears listening to again. The first big takeaway is that people that do buy leather are very positive about it. More than over half of them, they trust it to last a lifetime. They regard it as a very high quality product, and they look upon the benefits of comfort and practicality as very key in their purchasing decisions. So for us, that was a very positive takeaway. The people that buy leather, they associate it with the benefits that we would very much associate with it too. However, the second big takeaway, and again, for me, this feels like a little bit of a theme running through this morning, is there is a lack of knowledge. There is a lot of confusion around actually not just leather, but all materials. Looking at leather, first of all, half our respondents thought that leather or animals are raised for their hides and skins predominantly. Only less than quarter, 24%, know that it's a byproduct of the food industry. The lack of knowledge wasn't limited to leather. 13% of our respondents, for example, didn't know that wool comes from sheep. That was a little bit of a shocker for me. That would seem like a simple one. But also in terms of synthetics, people, actually almost half our respondents didn't even know that PU was a synthetic. Over half of them don't know what vegan leather is. When we presented them with a range of materials and asked them to identify whether they were plant-based, animal-based, or synthetic, the answers were very mixed indeed. I think pointing, again, I'm going to use this phrase again, a lack of knowledge. And the problem comes when people don't know where a material comes from and they don't know its impact on the environment, then they are unable to make informed purchasing decisions. The third big takeaway, and again, I think this is a positive one, is as part of the survey, we looked at what happened when we informed our respondents of the correct information. So for example, once we told them that leather was in fact a byproduct of the food industry, we saw that their responses to the questions change, and they would be more likely to buy it. when they understand that it's a byproduct. And actually in the younger group of consumers, the 18 to 34 age group, they were even more likely to buy it once they understood. And around a third of them, the reason they gave for this was that they did not like the idea of waste. And as another part of looking at how people's behavior changed once they were aware of the facts, we did this once we had covered the difference between synthetic and natural materials. And when presented with identical products at identical price points, once they knew the facts, our consumers were more likely to buy leather. And finally, our fourth big takeaway is the importance of brands. Because when consumers don't know the environmental impact of what they're buying, and they're not interested in researching it. And actually, by the way, half our respondents were interested in researching it, and they informed us they did search out the facts. But for those that don't, they trust the brands to give them the information. They take the view that the company I'm buying from is responsible and we trust them. It's a brand I like, and therefore I give them my trust. And also those brands who had very clear information about sustainability and environmental impact were more likely to be trusted. And I think for me, that sends a very clear message. It's a message, I think it's a thread of education and information that runs through all the research, that it's the responsibility of the industry to make sure the brands and the companies we deal with are in possession of the facts that they can then communicate to their consumers. And if anything, you know, when I started in the industry, it was all about the hang tag and what you put on the product. If anything, now we're in an age of even easier communication with the consumer through websites and social media and so on. It's never been easier to get the right facts out there. I'm going to leave it there because I think there's a lot more to come from this panel. What I would say, the QR code that you see on the screen there will give you a link to download the report. There's a lot of good reading in there, and we don't have time to cover it all today, unfortunately, but do snap the QR code. Those of you that don't have it can download it direct from there. Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Yes, maybe if you could put into the Q&R box the link, because sometimes the QR codes don't work well, and if you can copy and paste the link to the document, I think that will be certainly easier. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I will do that. Thank you.
Now let's go on with the panel, and yes, I think what we're going to do in this panel is actually we're going to try to have 3 rounds of question and answers. So we will have first interventions that are relatively short for allowing then these panel to be more interactive. I'd like to now give the floor to Christina Hajagos-Clausen, who is well known by us because she has already participated in other conferences. And I'm not going to give you any indication about where to start your initial remarks, but maybe I'd like to know from you if you want to add to that, where the leather industry stands with regards to its social credentials. That is something that I'd really like to hear from the IndustriAll at global level. Thank you very much, Christina.
Thanks, Gustavo, and it's a real pleasure to be here, albeit on video and not in person. I think the last time was about 3 years ago when we were in Brussels for also a similar end of project, of an EU-funded project. I'd also like to thank our affiliates who have contributed to the amazing work on this data collection of collective bargaining agreements, and also kind of furthering along what Judith mentioned about the importance of this work that is being done in Europe, but to expand it globally and it to be a resource tool for workers in other countries. As you know, social dialogue is healthy in Europe, but in other countries globally, there are systems that, you know, it's maybe only factory based. There's no sectoral kind of initiatives that we have here, or our affiliates in other countries are lacking counterparts. As you know, that's one of the key pieces of work that IndustriAll Global has been focusing on, is to establish well-functioning industrial relations, social dialogue in production countries. And you mentioned in the opening about action, collaboration, transformation. That is one platform that IndustriAll, with our MOU with 21 brands, global brands, have been working on to set up a sectoral approach. Clearly, we see the benefits of working on a sectoral fashion. You see it in Europe, you see it in this project, and the results that are measurable. So you did ask me to just maybe kind of begin a little bit on the how we view the social aspect. I think that, you know, in the global production system, and I think some of this can be, you know, tied back to what Deborah spoke about, is about misinformation by consumers, right? That it's a dirty sector, there's a lot of abuse, and there are problems globally in the sector. We're not saying there aren't, but there are, you know, ways to make this, and we see quite clearly in Europe and in other parts of the world where this sector is really working to improve social conditions. If you look at the leather part of the sector for automobiles, let's take fashion to one side, but if you think about automobiles, that's a highly unionized sector, coming from the meat industry to the tanning process to the automobile. So that sector, I would say, when we've done research as IndustriAll Global, there is it is a component, an important component in automobiles and in transport, not just automobiles, planes as well. But this is the way that this supply chain, there are connected in that sense. So I feel for globally, for the transport sectors that we're representing in manufacturing, there is a strong connection in production countries outside of Europe that have strong collective bargaining, even if it's just factory based, or in some countries like Brazil, it can be sectoral. So, or in Uruguay, for example, those that feed into the supply chain. I would say the fashion side is where we don't have a strong sense of how it's connected back to the brands. It's this traceability, the transparency issues that are, you know, that plague the sector on the fashion side. You know, as IndustriAll Global Union, we have a call out for brands to list all their suppliers. You know, we have this transparency pledge. So it was interesting to link back a little bit what Deborah said, that consumers, customers trust the brands on this. So if there is a way, you know, I don't know if this is a future project that we could jointly work on, taking the learnings from the Erica project to see if there's a way on this traceability and transparency in the fashion industry, because if it's customers who are relying on brands to promote the sustainability of the industry, we should try to make that connection. So I'm going to leave it at that, maybe just to kind of kick us off for the rest of the panel and some of the follow-up questions.
Thank you very much, Christina. Now I would like to switch to Deborah Taylor. Deborah is also a good friend that we know for quite a long time. Deborah, you are developing a new certification scheme. Tell us more about that.
Hi, hello everyone. Gosh, I want to touch on so many elements because there's already so many crossovers with what the first panel we're talking about and what we're talking about now. I want to say, first of all, when we're thinking about education, before I go on to SLF, when I presented at IUL-TCS at the end of last year, one of the things that I said was that we have to start cross-communicating. We need our scientists, we need our chemists, our leather technologists, and our generalists in the sustainability space. But we need to cross-pollinate between all those different functions to really drive forward those better outcomes. So that was one thing that I really wanted to mention. The other thing on this attraction of young people into the industry and keeping them in the industry, which is also really important. This afternoon, as a matter of fact, I've got a call with UAL, the London College of Fashion, to talk about chemistry and finishing, because they want to add some of that to their short courses. I've already presented at Oxford University this year, at the Manchester Fashion Institute this year. I present at the University of Northampton at the Institute of Creative Leather Technologies, to make sure that we are adding that sustainability dimension to all of that technical and fashion work that's going on now. And the other point that I just wanted to make on that really quickly is last week we had our Leather Fair APLF in Dubai. And at the leather sellers reception on the Thursday evening, there were 4 very bright young women that all just told us what they'd been doing at Northampton University. One of them was a leather technologist. One of them was a footwear designer. One of them was a fashion designer. The other one was a more mature student who had trained as a lawyer and was now retraining, had done leather technology and wants to get into auditing. These were our way forward, our next generation of people coming into the industry. And it is really important that we do maintain that talent and that young blood. So I just wanted to touch on those. Now I'm going to share my screen, so I want to keep this quick, because I know Gustavo does want to make this a bit more organic with some questions. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly and just show you what we've been doing at the Sustainable Leather Foundation. Let me just make this full screen for you all. Okay, so we set up the foundation in 2020 with a specific remit. We wanted to bring together the whole of the leather value chain in a much more holistic way. And we wanted to assess all elements of sustainability, not just focusing anymore on the environmental impacts of tannery operations, but really widening it out into the wider governance, including the social elements across that value chain. And we wanted to do it in a way that was accessible, inclusive and modular. I think we've touched on this already today. There isn't a one-size-fits-all for our industry. We have a lot of geographic differences and regional variances, and we've got to try to accommodate those in a much better way that doesn't leave anybody behind and allows us to raise the bar for everybody from the ground up. So that's just a quick overview there. If I think about how we approach that and the modularity of what we want to do, we have a really simple traffic light system, which works. If it's grey, they haven't started that assessment yet. If it's orange, it's a work in progress, but they're not meeting the standard required. If it's green, they meet the standard. And if it's red, they're failing the standard. Now, if it's a failure, that is likely to be regulatory rather than that they're just not ready yet. So there is a real distinction between that. If they're not meeting their operating permits or their discharge parameters or whatever it might be, that would be a failure. But otherwise, it's more likely to be work in progress or not started. And crucially, by laying it out in this way, the whole value chain benefits, and it enables us to give really accurate, verifiable information to the consumers. So this hooks right the way through. Debbie touched on it. It's the brands that have that responsibility of trust with the consumers. The consumers don't want all of the detail that we need in the value chain. They need us to express that in a way that they can just get those key takeaways and to regain that trust with their brands and their retailers. And this tool enables them to do that. So we're not just working with the tanneries, we are working with the product manufacturers, and we already have some product manufacturers now on board. And we do have a full suite of documents to support the process. It's not good enough to expect tanneries and other associated facilities to have to spend tens of thousands of pounds on really expensive consultants to get them through an audit, which doesn't ultimately teach them what to do. So we try to support from within to enable the facilities to do the work, understand the work, and then they're usually more willing to come on board with us. And we also give that inclusivity. So if a facility already has certification with another organization, we recognize that first, we map that for them, and we give them the equivalency of that before we then plug the gaps of what's still outstanding if they need us to. So we can either work from scratch with a tannery that has nothing at all, or we can work to just fill in the gaps for a facility that's already got a lot of certification already. And we're working with a lot of these organizations to drive that equivalency forward in a much more meaningful way for the industry. The work with the UN, I don't know whether you'll lead me into that again, Gustavo, but that work is on the fashion and footwear sectors. It is designed to drive forward traceability to enable that transparency approach. We've created a standard, we've created an approach that really lays the architecture for what good traceability should be, what data we should exchange, at which points, between which parties, and with what information. But not saying you must use this system. And again, making sure that it's interoperable so that we can work at the highly technological level if companies are at that place, or on a really manual level if organizations are not yet using IT to that degree. And we have to be able to bring those things together within the system. But maybe we'll talk about that a bit more. I'll hand back over to you for now, Gustavo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Debbie. It's really very good to see that there is something that can be done against audit fatigue. You see that there is a lot of certifications that are necessary because you need to have the possibility to show that you are acting conform to some standard or some reference, you bring it all together into one system that allows the companies not to duplicate the certification. So thank you very much for this novelty, for this innovation in the certification, in the world of certification, particularly for the leather industry, which is made up of so many small and medium-sized enterprises. We will come back to the question concerning transparency and traceability. Don't worry. Now for the first the opening remarks of Fabiana Orlandi. I think that we have been talking about a lot of things, but not really about what is really the intrinsic characteristic of the leather industry. And maybe Fabiana, you can bring it to us. How leather plays its role in the circular economy, how we match actually all these objectives of the circular economy, and then maybe we can have a round of debates between the different panels.
Okay, thank you, Gustavo. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for the invitation. Let me share my screen. Only to use the language and the approach of a UNIC sustainability report to talk about circularity, but also to talk about sustainability in general and what sustainability means for Italian and European tanning sector, really. Sustainability is a journey, and it is a result of the work of thousands of companies, but also thousands of people that contributes every day to the global sustainable development as defined by the ONU Agenda 2030. How? First of all, let me start from leather. Leather is a natural and renewable material, and it is sustainable by origin. It is the result of an upcycling process that transforms a byproduct of a food industry into a very valuable material, very valuable product. As already said before, no animal, except exotic, of course, is slaughtered for its skin. And also another important fact is that the fiber structure of leather created by nature doesn't change during the tanning processes. This is the reason why the leather has so high and unique performances. And also this is the reason why no other materials can be defined as leather without a misleading information to consumer, as already Debbie said before. Leather sustainability means processes that are carried out, minimizing the negative impacts on the environment, but also, and this is a very important issue, but also developing positive impacts such as circularity, as you said before, and also emphasizing symbiosis with other production sectors like agriculture, but not only. And at the same time, reducing the consumption of raw materials, but also pollution and emissions. But leather sustainability means also social responsibility, well-being of workers, promoting safer and healthier conditions at the workplace, improving work conditions, and also the participation to workers to the company's life. But this social sustainability must be includes also initiatives to young people to engage them, because young people have their own perspectives for the future, and the sector needs to meet them. Finally, but also on this point, we have time for the next question. I think to come into deep, sustainability, it's important to underline that sustainability is transparency and due diligence along the entire value chain. And this is a very important point, because when we talk about sustainability, we cannot consider only the gate-to-gate of tannery, but we need to consider all the supply chain.
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, I was putting in the chat box for the question and answers also the link to the sustainability report of UNIC-Concerie Italiane, which is really an interesting reading point. Now we can go to the second round of interventions, and here I think that you are really free to take a point on what your fellow panelists have been saying. But I'm going to provoke your an answer by asking the different panelists on a particular point. I think it would be interesting to see. You have been talking about authenticity, both Fabiana, but also Debbie Burton. What is the importance of authenticity actually, and for the consumers and for the industry, and how important it is it for distinguishing between leather and alternative materials? Debbie, can you help us with that?
I think for me it actually comes down to something Deborah said as well, which is demystifying the facts for the consumer. Is while they may not need to dive into or even understand all technical background something, they need facts which they can easily understand and assimilate. I'll use an example I talked about a lot last week, and that is within Leather Naturally. We try very hard to use consumer-facing language. We spend a lot of time researching what consumers type into Google and the questions they ask about leather. And that actually led to us changing our whole homepage, where we put the 10 most frequently asked questions about leather on the homepage. That was the result of a lot of research we did. And I think, again, Deborah, I think, talked about the cross-functional collaboration between different groups. And this is where, again, in Leather Naturally, we work. First of all, we want to make sure any information we're giving is based on facts. I think there's a lot of emotion used when talked about different materials. And actually, there's a lot of emotion used when trying to turn consumers against leather. And I think as an industry, we can't do that. We have to be very clear. We have to communicate data, but we have to do it in a way that the consumer understands. So whenever we produce fact sheets, for example, first of all, it's what does the consumer want to know? 2, what are the facts? And that comes from our educational team, who are technical people and chemists. And then that works with the communications team to say, okay, this technical stuff is great. How can we explain that to the consumer so it gives them something they can go away and do something with it and make a decision on it?
Thank you so much, Debbie. From Christina, we have heard what has been done in the past, how the actually the awareness has been raised with regard to social health and safety, social aspects and health and safety aspects in the fashion sector and also in the leather industry. I would like to ask you, Christina, if I may, where should we actually act? Where can we improve even further the image of the leather industry? Where should we act actually, or where can we make still more progress?
I think one thing that I wanted to kind of redraw our attention to is around occupational health and safety. And I'm sure you're aware that recently in the ILO there was a recommendation that we worked on and have approved now, the code of practice for health and safety in the garment and footwear, so including leather and tanneries. So this is now an approved code of practice within the ILO and should be used for guidance for the tannery industry as well. So I think if there's some joint work that we can do together in the ILO promoting the code of practice, because that's a document that's now been, negotiated with workers, employers, and government, and has now been approved by the governing body in March. It's being translated now by the ILO into languages for production countries. So I think this is a tool that we negotiated last year around health and safety. I would say the other piece of work where we could make progress, where we've done this with fashion brands, is similar to what we've worked on. You mentioned the Bangladesh Accord, but now you know that we've renegotiated that agreement with the brands, and now it's an international accord that will have country programs around health and safety, occupational health and safety. It's not only building and fire safety. Currently, it's only for garment. It would be interesting to see if, brands would have the appetite to work on that, to expand the scope to include leather as well, because this is already a proven model. They're currently now on the international accord signatories. There's over 171 global brands who've signed on to it. And we are in the midst of doing feasibility studies for new countries, and to also expand the scope. Like Bangladesh, we don't have leather in the program. What it is really is about the the ready-made sector. So there is, I think maybe this is further conversations, but I would say that would be a way to improve consumer confidence in the sector, to ensure that, in production countries, outside of Europe, because I think within Europe you have a regulatory framework and good social dialogue and negotiations. But in the absence of that, these kind of brand, industry, and global trade union agreements help build consumer confidence in the absence of legislation that, national legislation, or even if there's national legislation, it not being implemented in the right way. So I would say it's something that we don't want to do forever, but it is sort of a stopgap right now where we are, that it has value in the supply chain. So let me leave it there.
Thank you so much, and thank you for saying that the European leather industry could be showing also best practice and help other countries to come to a better practice in their countries, because
that's why the Erica project is so good, because it collects the collective bargaining agreements. You're able to search by key search words, and that's a tool that I'm going to try to promote it with have our European affiliates try to promote it to our non-European affiliates, because it is an important tool. Everyone's always looking for the right language to put in their collective bargaining, and to be able to compare that across a host of different countries is very important.
Yes, indeed, and it promotes basically the social dialogue, because for joining, for being able to join the club of these 7 countries, 8 countries with UK, you need to make a joint application. The social partners of both sides of the industry need to make this application jointly, and need to commit to prepare the same documentation as the others have done. So that is actually stimulating the social partners in other countries to follow the pace that we have been, or the pathway that we have been showing. So I hope that it will help many others to make us to join these repository. That will make it also much more relevant and much more important, because you will be able to compare between much more countries and much more documentations. Right. Now I'd like to come back to Deborah. Deborah, you know that I cut you short, but now you have the possibility to expand on the transparency and traceability. I think that you have something there in the pipeline that is going to be very interesting for the industry. Deborah, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I think it's important to talk about this project in terms of having industry adoption and engagement. For example, the reports that I prepared for this project, people like Gustavo and the guys at UNIC all fed back and all gave commentary, criticism, to make that something that was really crafted and represented the leather industry. So the project itself has 2 work streams. Well, actually it has 4 work streams, but it has 2 principal material work streams: the textile value chain on the one end and the leather value chain on the other. The work that we've done for both of those value chains has been the same, but we've had different expertise in those groups. The project has created policy recommendations and guidelines that have been adopted at UN level, and they're available on the website. I think I could probably put the link to the website in the chat in a moment for you all. The next step was to do really detailed business process analysis for both these separate value chains, textile and leather, that really looked at what our processes are, the actors involved in those processes, direct and indirect actors, and then the risks that apply across the value chain from farm to finished product and post-consumption, if we can get there, but that's still quite challenging in some areas. Some of the risks are specific to just certain parts of the value chain. For example, deforestation is the farming element when we think about leather value chain, whereas something like social and human rights aspects will be along the whole supply chain. Things like energy consumption will be along the whole supply chain. So we broke it down, we looked at where the risks were, and then we identified the mitigating risks, the mitigating organizations for those risks, what we had that already existed as good practice in the industry. After that, we then considered the really detailed descriptions of those activities and what we do, and where the data exchanges could naturally occur. And one of the things that we started with was use what you already have. We already have a lot of information that we use in our day-to-day business life that provide that traceability potential. Shipping notes, invoices, dispatch notes, those sorts of things. So let's start with the information that we know is already there. Let's layer that up with the information that we know we could have, and then let's see what gaps we've got. The conclusion of that big body of work, and it was a big body of work, it took us a year maybe to complete it all, was that generally there is the good potential for traceability. It's just not being delivered upon for a number of reasons. And we know we have challenges, we have complex value chains, we have commercial sensitivities. So putting all of that aside, what could a good system look like? And what will that enable us to do? And that will enable us to layer it with good sustainability, transparency, and metrics and performance criteria that will enable the brands to show their due diligence and be able to talk effectively with their consumers. So the current piece of work that we're at now is a leather blockchain pilot. We're working with a number of key brands, key tanners, a couple of chemical companies, some of the key NGOs in the space, and we have participation from North America, South America, Europe, of course, and the UK and Asia. So we've built up a good network globally of different value chains. Some of these value chains in the pilot can only go back as far as the slaughterhouse. Others can go right back to the farm. Some of them are more integrated than others. So we have a really good variety within this scope. And although it is a pilot, so this is a test environment and a more controlled environment, it is proving the efficacy of the approach. So we really hope that in the fullness of time, certainly by the summer, we'll be able to give a report on the blockchain pilot. But we certainly hope in the fullness of time, we'll have the architecture in place that the whole industry can adopt as a best practice for traceability moving forward. And of course, that will enable us our transparency. Gustavo.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Now the second round for Fabiana. I would like to ask Fabiana to give us a little bit more insight into how the leather industry fits well into the Green Deal, this new initiative that the European Commission has launched with the new Commission has launched with for the industry and for the economy, and also to see how circular the leather industry actually is. For that, maybe you have a slide, and that I would like to ask Gina to show the slide.
Okay.
Can you put it on?
Or I can share by myself.
Or you can do it. Okay.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfectly. As you said, the European New Green Deal is the agenda for making the EU economy sustainable. It provides a roadmap, a global roadmap with actions to boost the efficient use of resources by moving to circular economy and in parallel stop climate change and cut pollution. The circular model of the tanning industry and of the Italian industry in particular, is in relationship mainly with 4 as the pillars of the new Green Deal. Of course, the circular economy, but also on the farm to fork strategy, on the clean industrial production, and on the sustainable buildings. How? Of course, circular economy is one of the main blocks of the Green Deal, and the European Commission has already set out a detailed action plan on that. And on this plan, leather production plays a very important role. As already mentioned, raw hides and skins are a byproduct of another industry, so are also circular by origin, but they are transformed into finished leather, and as I already said, with an upcycling process, and this is very important in also for the European Green Deal, because we had values to the material during the tanning process. And also a large part of scraps becomes or can be transformed into raw materials for many sectors, such as agriculture and so on. But why we can recover this material? In the slide, you can see a very short explanation on that. These recovering processes are possible because the organic nature of the leather and of the chemical composition of leather, and also of course of leather scraps, because leather is composed by collagen fibers that animals have built during their life. Collagen is made by proteins that are composed by amino acids. At the end of the life of leather and its production scraps, we can recover collagen fibers to produce new materials like gelatins, cosmetics, and food supplements also. But fibers can be disassembled into basic proteins and amino acids that can be used in the food industry or building application to create sustainable materials like plaster that plays a very important role in the sustainable buildings. And it's in the use of leather scraps in fertilizers and biostimulants is very important, because they give a sort of food to vegetables, avoiding the stress of plants on vegetables to transform inorganic materials into their own proteins. And finally, leather matches also the goals of the circular economy action plan of the EU, also because leather is a durable material. So leather articles can be reused, repaired, and maintained, and this is a very important aspect also for the EU environmental policies.
Thank you very much, Fabiana. I think that we have now a very good view about the leather industry, and we have exhausted also our time. What I'd like to ask my panelists is if you have a very short, conclusive remark, you can do it now, but it must be short. I can give you 1 minute for each of you. Is there anyone who wants to have this this time used?
I'll say really quick.
Yes,
just thinking about Bangladesh, I've already started auditing tanneries and product manufacturers in Bangladesh. They are really receptive to improvement. I'm talking with the Uzbekistan Leather Association right now. I didn't even know Uzbekistan had a leather industry until 2 weeks ago. They have quite a large industry and they want to learn from what we do in Europe, and they want access to European and Western markets. So they're very keen to come on board. And Zimbabwe and the African countries, I'm about to embark on a project of work with the African countries. These are rich production countries that we do need to support in the right way, in a way that allows them to grow at a pace that's commensurate with where they're at right now, instead of coming at them with really high expectations. But the key takeaway is that countries that thus far haven't felt like they could operate on the international stage now feel that there's a pathway that they can take. And bringing all of these things together, and particularly the social elements, so important. But the tannery in Bangladesh that I audited just the other week were not just going with the minimum either. They were doing more than was expected of them by law. They were giving their workers additional travel allowances, lunch allowances, attendance allowances. And their workers, when I interviewed them, the minimum worker length of service was 9 years, and 3 of the people that I interviewed had been with this organization for 18 years. So there are some really good things happening in some of these areas, and sometimes we get a bit distracted by one big negative thing and forget all the other positive things that are going on around it. And I think it's time we reversed that trend and started concentrating on the positives. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Maybe I just jump in and say I couldn't agree more. I think we sometimes are just, on the negative aspects of what's happening, and we really should be, I mean, okay, things happen, right? I'm not, there are, shady employers out there, but there are really good employers too, and we should highlight the collective bargaining agreements that are happening, the extra benefits that workers are receiving in the industry. So Deborah, thanks for bringing that up. I think that's a really important point to that we stress, that there are positive things that should be highlighted as well.
I think with my consumer hat on, I would absolutely endorse those comments and focusing on the positive. I mean, in leather, we have a material that lasts a long time. We can reuse it, we can repair it, it can be recycled. It's the perfect material for a society that needs to become circular, and we just need to focus on getting those positive messages out there in a way that the consumer can understand them.
Absolutely. Anyone else before I give the floor to Patricia?
Okay, only some final and very short highlights to conclude. As we see, leather is a result of complex process of transformation, starting from farming and slaughterhouses until the final manufacturers and brand. So along this line, each actor contributes to a part of the environmental, social, and also economic values and impacts, both positive and negative. Is also important, in my point of view, also stress the fact that impacts can be also positive and not only negative. This means that it's important to connect all actors of the supply chain, and our sector needs a real and effective partnership to build, first of all, a better knowledge of leather to consumers, but not only, and also to build a network of cooperative players that work together at the same level to promote this unique, beautiful, and of course, sustainable material. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fabiana. I think this is really a very important point to make at the end. I think now, Patrizia, I want to give you the floor because you have been waiting there for a while. Please, Patrizia, take the floor.
No, grazie Gustavo. Non solo stavo ascoltando con molto interesse, ma devo dire, ovviamente mi permetto di dare del tu a tutte le persone presenti, anche alla stessa Fabiana, che ci ha illustrato tutto un processo che per i non addetti ai lavori è interessantissimo. Comunque volevo dire che sia io che Gustavo dobbiamo ritenerci soddisfatti di come si è evoluto questo progetto, perché alla fine, anche dagli interventi che ci sono stati di Deborah, di Debbie e di Christina, il nostro scopo l'abbiamo raggiunto, cioè avere appunto un progetto che ha coinvolto tanti paesi ma che può essere preso in considerazione come buona pratica per coloro che non hanno una contrattazione a livello nazionale, come ci raccontava Deborah. Secondo me è un grosso risultato e possiamo ritenerci soddisfatti. Parlo a voce, diciamo, aperta con tutti, ma è ovvio che mi riferisco molto a Gustavo questa cosa. Quindi ha dimostrato il progetto Erika che fare un progetto di dialogo sociale su un tema specifico può contribuire, come diceva anche Christina, che ha dato l'opportunità di vedere nel suo mondo, quindi del global, com'è la situazione, che può veramente dare importanza ai partner sociali. Quindi io, per quanto mi riguarda, sono molto molto soddisfatta e ringrazio anche i nuovi interlocutori che non conoscevo, ma ho avuto il piacere di conoscere, come Fabiana, Deborah e Debbie. Grazie mille per le vostre informazioni e ti ridò la parola, Gustavo. Grazie ancora.
Grazie mille, Patrizia. Yes, my president was saying at the beginning of the conference that it would be good to have the opportunity to listen for once about positive things about the industry in this type of seminars, and I think that, as Patrizia has been saying, that we have achieved our goal, that we have been able to do good things and to show that these good things can be communicated also to the people. And I hope that that something of that is also picked up by the people who are not so much into leather, and that they understand that leather is actually a very important material, that and tanneries are very important, have a very important societal function, because actually these are recycling operations that are taking care of the residues of one industry and produce something that is good for the people, good for the industry, of course. And Christina is going to be watching at what I'm saying, as well as Deborah and Debbie. We need to take care that this transformation of a residue into a valid and valuable product is made in the best conditions, both environmentally and socially. And that is what we wanted to convey today to the people. And for doing that, we need also to take into consideration that education and training is fundamental for allowing the people in the sector to grow, to rise, and to improve their welfare and their activities. So, unless somebody wants to take the floor, I think that we have achieved our objectives and that we can conclude the seminar. Can I don't see anyone wanting to take the floor. I like to invite people who want to take some of the links that have been shared in the question and answers section. You can copy that and keep it for you. Otherwise, we're going to be sending out to all registered participants also a reminder of what has been presented here today. So without any further ado, I thank everybody for their participation. I thank the interpreters for their good work. I think we have had a few moments where the interpretation has not worked perfectly. I apologize for that, but I think that the interpreters have done really an amazing work. They're doing an amazing work day by day. And well, of course, thank you very much to all the panelists, to the speakers and to the panelists for their insight into the information that has been conveyed today. And well, Patricia, I thank you, because without you, we wouldn't have been able to do this project. So it is a good example of how good cooperation can lead to very interesting results. So without any further comments, I'd like to close this final conference of the ERICA project. I hope that everybody has enjoyed this conference. Thank you very much.
Grazie.
Thank you.